What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the channel. For this video, we're going to be talking about the Green Bay Packers' last regular season, their off-season up to this point so far, and how I think their season is going to look in this upcoming season. And while that I'm going to be talking about all that, I'm going to have Madden 24, the Packers in the background. So the Packers, they had a slow start this year. They started 3-6 and were not looking like a good football team. Jordan Love was not looking like a good quarterback either. But they were able to finish the season strong with a 9-8 record, and that was good enough to win the 7th seed in the playoffs. And with that 7th seed, they had one of the biggest upsets of the year against the number 2 seed Cowboys, winning that game, and they narrowly lost a heartbreaker in the divisional round to the 49ers. And I mean, that's really impressive considering it was Jordan Love's first full year starting, because they had him sitting behind former Packers QB Aaron Rodgers for a few years. And people were questioning what the hell the Packers were doing, myself included. But clearly they know what they're doing because, that doesn't happen by accident. That season, I mean, the first half wasn't very good, but the second half more than made up for it. I think Packers fans would agree with me on that. And talking about some departures and some new faces on this team, they got Josh Jacobs to be their new running back over from the Raiders. And the reason they got Josh Jacobs is because Aaron Jones left for the rival Vikings. And that's going to be a huge loss for them. I don't know if Josh Jacobs is going to be good enough to replace the production that Aaron Jones has had over those past few years, because he's been playing really well with them. And they just didn't want to pay him, which is understandable. I mean, he is getting old. So they got Josh Jacobs to replace him. They also got Xavier McKinney away from the Giants. And he's a really young, talented player. And I think he'll help this defense out tremendously. And that is one side of the ball I have concerns with, is the defense. Because you could argue this team should have made the NFC Championship game, because they were up against the 49ers. Ironically, like their division rival, I just talked about the Lions. They were up by 10, or they were up by 7 or 10. I can't remember which one, against the 49ers, and their defense choked. They had a lead and they just couldn't sustain it. And you just have to wonder, is this defense going to keep doing the same shit that they did with Aaron Rodgers? Because a big reason why Aaron Rodgers has only won one Super Bowl up to this point is because of the defense and how or should I say lack thereof defense when it comes playoff time. And I'm worried that the Packers are going to do the same thing with Jordan Love, because they did sign Jordan Love to the highest contract in NFL history. Congrats to him, by the way. And that's just one of those things where when you pay your quarterback that much money, there's going to be things you can't do with your roster. And I feel like the Packers are going to run into that problem in the future. So their window to truly compete is probably next year and maybe the year after that. And I mean, you could say that whenever Jordan Love's on the team, they have a chance. If you think Jordan Love is that good, I think he's all right. I don't know if he's as good as his contract, but it's kind of like the Trevor Lawrence thing I mentioned in my Jags video, where it's like you either pay him now, pay him later at a higher price, or let him walk. And obviously they're not going to do the third option, and you might as well do the first option if you think he's good enough. And it is kind of weird though, because he only played well for half of last season, because the first half was really not so good. So they just have to hope that they get the second half version of Jordan Love and not the first half. Because if they get the first half, they're going to be in big trouble. They will not be any good if they get that Jordan Love. But the second half Jordan Love, that's what they're hoping they'll get. That's this Jordan Love that they, want on their team, obviously. And, I think he's as good as some people say, but I do think he's a top 10 quarterback. I have him at 10. And, I think he's proven enough to be in the top 10. Is he going to stay in the top 10? We'll have to see how he plays next season. But, I think he's good. I don't think he's too overrated. The contract looks bad, but every quarterback contract looks bad these days just because of how massive they all are. But I think overall, I understand why the Packers did it. I would have done the same thing because you just have to pay your guy. And if you believe he's the guy, you got to lock him down while you can at a premium price. And that's what the Packers did. As for their defense, I mentioned there's issues with it. And I said I had concerns with it. Although there is one thing they did that I really like. They finally fired defensive coordinator Joe Brady. And I know Packers fans are going to agree with me on this. He was not a good defensive coordinator. He tried at the end of the season, but I think they still should have fired him. He's just been a horrible defensive coordinator for these past couple of years. And, it's good they finally got rid of him because there really is a lot of talent on this defense if you think about it. You've got Rashawn Gary on the defensive line. You've also got Jair Alexander. I mentioned they got Xavier McKinney from the Giants. It's probably a few guys I'm forgetting too, but the point is there is talent on this defense. I don't think it's a talent issue. I think it might be a depth issue, but I really think it's more of a coaching issue because, coaching, that's one of the main components to whether or not your team's going to ride or die. And the Packers defense chose to die against the 49ers in the divisional round, and that was the last straw for the Packers, and they finally cut Joe Brady loose, which, in my opinion, was the right decision to do. Nothing against Joe Brady, but he just wasn't getting not Joe Brady, Joe Barry. I say Joe Brady. Joe Barry. That's his name. If I said Joe Brady earlier, I'm wrong. It's Joe Barry. And, good. I think it's a good decision to get rid of him because he was holding the team back for a while, holding the defense back for sure. And we'll see how this team does without him because I'm hoping they'll be better because I do like the Packers. They're a fairly likable team. I know a lot of people hate the Packers, but I think they're okay. And that's all I got for this team so far. I guess Matt LaFleur, he's a topic of discussion. His playoff coaching is a little iffy. I didn't talk about that yet, but he could definitely use some work in some of his play calling in the playoffs. And I'm thinking specifically when they had Aaron Rodgers, because I think when you're a team as young as the Packers were last season and you even make the playoffs, that's impressive as hell. And I will give Matt LaFleur and the Packers credit for that. But is it going to be the same thing where when they do get to the playoffs, like Matt LaFleur is going to make some questionable play calling? Because I remember in the 2020 NFC Championship game, the Packers were the 1 seed. They were favored to beat the Buccaneers, and they didn't do it. And a big reason why they didn't do it was because Matt LaFleur, kicked a field goal down by 8 when it was 4th down. It's like, why are you kicking a field goal down by 8 when you have the ability to score a touchdown? It's like, if you don't get it, that's one thing, but literally just waving the white flag and kicking a field goal, that was stupid. And I still don't understand why he did that. It just doesn't make sense why he did that. So I'm wondering is he going to learn from that and, not kick a field goal down by 8 in the fourth quarter? Because that was one of the stupidest things I ever seen. That was 3 years ago, and I usually don't bring up things like that, but the fact that I am just shows how stupid it was, because I usually try to, leave certain games in the past, but, it's something to talk. It's something, to discuss about Matt LaFleur, because does he choke in the playoffs? I mean, that's kind of it's an interesting, argument there. I mean, it's kind of like you have to really ask yourself, can he really bring this team to the Super Bowl? Does he have what it takes? Because, I mean, I haven't really seen him, elevate his team that much in the playoffs. It's like they just they either play, good enough to beat the bad teams, or they play bad enough to lose to the good teams. I don't really see them, elevate that much. And this is really more regarding to when they were the, 1 seed back in 2020 and 2021 for that matter, because they also choked in the playoffs in 2021. And, you just, I don't know. Is it going to be the same story with Jordan Love? I mean, you really don't know, because we have to wait and see. But, it's something that, you could really convince yourself of, because, they went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. And, I feel like, they kind of did the same thing with Brett Favre. I mean, they only won 1 Super Bowl with Brett Favre, and they also only won 1 Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. And don't get me wrong, I mean, winning any Super Bowl is unbelievable, but, when you have a transcendent talent quarterback like Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers, and I guess if you want to say Jordan Love, I feel like you should win at least multiple Super Bowls. And I feel like this team doesn't really do a great job of, doing that. I mean, they do a great job of finding quarterbacks, probably the best team in NFL history at finding quarterbacks. I mean, I feel like they just have a, top 10, top 5, maybe top 1 quarterback, depending on, what season it is, on their roster every single year. And it's like, it is so impressive how they're able to do that. But I mean, if you can't win in the playoffs, as much as you should, I mean, does it really matter that much? I mean, sure it does if for that 1 Super Bowl, but you'd think that you'd want, 2, 3, or 4 Super Bowls with one of those quarterbacks. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has already won 3 Super Bowls, and he's only 29. And I mean, Tom Brady's obviously, a huge exception to this rule, but he won 7. I mean, I wouldn't expect any player to win 7 Super Bowls, but you'd think, at least 2 or 3 if you're a player of the caliber of Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers. But, they both only won 1. And Jordan Love, I feel like, I don't think he's as good as Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers. I certainly don't think he's a bad quarterback, but I also don't think he's, the next coming of one of those guys, because those guys just have such a high bar when it comes to talent, and I think that's just a huge void to fill, and I don't think he's ready for that yet. If he ever even gets to that point, I mean, you can't expect anyone to be those 2 guys. Those 2 guys are, unbelievable, future Hall of Famers. Brett Favre's already Hall of Famer. Aaron Rodgers will be a future Hall of Famer. Jordan Love, though, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen, a lot from him to really convince myself that he's going to be, as good as some people say he's going to be. And I feel like just because the Packers are good at finding quarterbacks, they just automatically think Jordan Love's going to be the next, great quarterback. And it's like, he's only played 1 season. I mean, I got to see more from him before I call the Packers a dynasty or anything like that, and also including the playoff struggles they did have with the Hall of Fame quarterbacks. It's like, I feel like you just gotta, slow down and just try and make sure that you've got all your pieces in the right places if you're the Packers. I know that sounds cliche, but I feel like that's just what they need to do. And, you just have to wonder what they're going to do if Jordan Love isn't what they expect him to be, if he starts to fall off a cliff or something like that, because that is very possible. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen because I don't think that's going to happen, but it's definitely a possibility. And that's one of the worst situations to be in. If you're with a quarterback on a contract like that and you're just stuck with him and he's not good enough to get the job done, it's a risk that the Packers took, because they thought Jordan Love was the guy, which he still could be. I'm not saying he's not the guy. This isn't like Daniel Jones where we know he's not the guy and it was a mistake from the start. This could age like fine wine, or this could age like spoiled milk. We'll just have to see how Jordan Love plays. We'll have to see how the Packers handle this situation. And we'll just have to see how things go from here. And, the Packers have always ruled the NFC North for the past, 30, 40 years. I honestly don't know, but they're the top dog in that division, and it's not super close either. They're not the top dog anymore. I think it's the Lions and then the Packers. If I had to do a division ranking, it'd go like Lions, Packers, Bears, and then Vikings. Vikings, Bears is interchangeable. I'm not sure which one yet, but that's another thing. It's a little unfortunate as well that they're in the same division as the Lions, who I do think are going to be, a Super Bowl contender for at least the next 2 or 3 years. And, we'll just have to see which team is able to, progress further. And I honestly think it's the Lions, just because I feel like they've built their team longer and they have more chemistry as well. And I think their offense is way more talented. And, I just think it's going to be hard for the Packers to really do much with the Lions in their division. But that's all I got for the Packers, and my thoughts on that. We'll shift our focus to the Madden game, which is very one-sided. Down by 21 against the Buffalo Bills. First down and 10. Passes incomplete, knocked down by Matt Milano. It'll be second down and 10 at the 28-yard line. Jordan Love back to pass. He's going to throw. Passes knocked away again. Jordan Love is underthrowing all these passes. As his third down and 10 at the 28, Jordan Love, who already has 2 picks on the day, is going to throw. He gets hit. The ball just hits the ground. It'll be fourth down and 10 at the 28. And we're kicking a field goal. I guess in spirit of what I said about Matt LaFleur, we're kicking a field goal down by 21 to be down by 18 instead. We're going to attempt the onside kick, and this is a no-go. And it'll be the 42-yard line for the Bills, and they can basically run the clock out. But if there's one thing there's one thing about Madden players is they just like to rub salt in the wound. And, every guy who's up by this much, they don't show respect or anything. They just keep, firing the missiles. It's like, come on, dude, you don't got to do that. But he's doing it, and we honestly can't stop him because we're not the greatest Madden player. I'm not the greatest Madden player of all time. So this game's going to just end here. I'm just going to take a knee because I honestly wanted to just get out of this game. This game was a nightmare from, not start to finish, really the second half, because we played all right in the first half, but we didn't really get to talk about that because the focus of the video, the main focus is the Packers in real life. And, we don't get to talk about the first half usually because usually I take up a huge chunk of time talking about the real Packers. But that's all I got for this video. Thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. And we'll see how the Packers do. I think they'll still make the playoffs, but we'll have to see what they do when they get there. And I will see you in my next video.